morning.
Good morning.
I don't know if you can tell from the background. If you know the show, you absolutely can. We've moved into the summer studio. That means spring must finally be here, right?
Yes.
Yes. All right. We'll take that from the plant cell wall biochemist, aka our local resident meteorologist.
Well, you can tell it is spring because we have I suppose it's 2.5 feet high raised bed that we grow herbs in the summer. So yesterday, Dana took a picture of a bunny that managed to jump into it.
So naughty. Yes, the rabbits are in full force. Who had any idea that having a dog and then not having a dog would make such a difference to the rabbit
did
population?
a better job than we thought.
Anyway, this is not a show about our deceased dog. We are super, super, super excited today. We have a brand new to us guest. We just met her 3.5 minutes ago. So we will be learning all about Arlina Allen along with you. She hosts the podcast, the One Day at a Time podcast. I was listening to some episodes this morning. I cannot wait to talk with her. So let's bring her on.
Yes.
All right. Let me pull her up. Remember, everyone, you can ask questions and we will see them. So listen and engage with us. Arlina, hello.
Hello there.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm so thrilled to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
I'm so excited to be here.
It's great. So Arlina, you're in Boise.
Boise, Idaho. Yes, ma'am.
It's so beautiful there.
It really is. And it was so funny because I'm from California. When my friends, we moved out here, we followed some friends out here. And when they were moving, I was like, Boise, why Boise? What's in Idaho? And then I came out there and I was like, oh, damn, we're moving.
A lot of things are in Idaho. A lot of geographic beauty and potatoes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know. I was going to say there's more than potatoes.
Yeah. You know, when you marry an Irishman, he's on the quest for potatoes always.
Oh, right.
Yeah. He eats enough potatoes for both of us. Yes, there we go. Well, Arlina, let's jump right into it because your story is really interesting and just well worth sharing. First of all, I just want to say that I happened to come across the fact that you have been sober since April 23rd, 1994. So you just celebrated your 28th year of sobriety.
Gosh, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I feel super blessed. And I celebrated it in Miami with 500 other women at the She Recovers event. I don't know if you're familiar with that organization.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, so their tagline is everyone's recovering from something, but it was so much fun and it was beautiful. And I just feel super blessed and like, why me? Why did I get so lucky? But
well, I would argue it's luck and work. You did some work.
I know why.
Wake up one day under some sort of shiny star and be sober.
Oh, shiny star. Wouldn't that have been nice?
Yeah.
No, I did not wake up. It was more like somebody else's ceiling. I was like, that's not my ceiling. How did I get here again? Yeah.
So let's go into that, Arlina. Talk about that journey from wherever you want to start to 28 years and a few days ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's super important to talk about family of origin stuff because that sort of sets the context for the entire journey. You know, my parents, my dad is from Kentucky. My mother is from Mexico City. And there were 400 years of ministers on my daddy's side. And my mother, she wasn't like super Catholic, but there was a lot of God growing up in my household and not a lot of drinking. My parents did not display the drinking or using behaviors at all. But a couple of things happened to me when I was very young. I was molested by a neighbor and that at a really young age. And then my parents divorced. And, and then there was a lot of church in my life too. So I had this idea that I was bad trying to get good, and then when these things happened to me, I sort of, in my child mind, decided what those events meant. It meant that I was bad. It meant that I wasn't worthy. It meant that I was broken. And I felt like I had, was spending my time and thoughts trying to be saved or get well or whatever. I don't know. So I thought I've had this feeling that I was fundamentally bad or broken. And so, when I found alcohol at the tender age, it was between 8 and 10. And I really just cannot, I was young. I cannot wrap my head around it being much younger than 10. I met my stepdad when I was 10 years old. He gave me my very first journal when I was 10. And obviously it was before that. My mom had gone out on a date and my sister and I were left home alone when I had my first drink. And I don't know why I decided to do this, but I decided to have a drink. I have an older sister. She was almost 2 years older than me. She and I were left home alone when mom went out to dinner. And I thought it'd be a great idea to drink some of the booze that was in this bottle in the cabinet. It must have been left over from a party. And I don't even know where that idea came from or why I decided to do it. But I'll tell you what, when I took that first drink, it burned my lips. It burned all the way down. But when it hit bottom, that warmth spread through my whole body. And all the, I hate to say self-hatred and self-consciousness, but all that was lifted. And all I was left with was this amazing feeling. And I actually didn't realize how bad I felt until I felt really good. It was like the juxtaposition of those two feelings, like was burning my psyche forever. And yeah. And so that was my first drink. And then it was sort of, and I was falling down and I threw up. My sister cleaned me up and put me to bed. And she never said anything to my mother. Years later, I asked her, why didn't you say anything to mom? And she said, because I would have gotten in trouble.
Oh,
and it really just speaks to the dynamic in our house of, taking inappropriate responsibility for others and not taking enough responsibility. Years later, through a lot of work,
that's a lot of,
I realized that was the dynamic. So that's kind of how it started. And that sort of theme was consistent right up until I was 25 years old and crashed and burned and decided to get some help. I thought I'd pause and let you ask a question. I will totally ramble if you let me.
No, this is what this show is about.
If it was about us, that's Tuesday. Thursdays is about someone else. So that's fabulous.
An old friend of ours now, he once said to me, because he listens to us, he said, you know what's good about you two? You let your guests speak.
Oh my gosh. Do you know that is probably the number one criticism I get on my podcast is I have questions. I get excited and I interrupt people. They get so mad.
I have to work at it. You will often see me do this.
Yeah, I do that. I think, no, I'm trying to stop myself. Like
you guys are like holding each other back.
It's kind of, a little bit of a trigger thing that happens with us. But
so funny.
Wow, that's one of the things that's so interesting, and I say this all the time, but it continues to surprise me, is just this idea that everybody we talk to, almost everybody we talk to, has some sort of incredibly unique story because every life is unique.
Yeah.
So many of the emotional responses to alcohol are the same.
Oh, yeah. I say that too. I say that, our circumstances are different, but the feelings are all the same. Like I speak at a lot of meetings and stuff. And sometimes I walk into a room and I'm aware that, I've kind of, I'm a middle-aged white woman. I have my act together. And, when you do certain things for a long period of time, you accumulate some stuff and whatever. And sometimes I walk into a room like I walked into this women's center, Mariposa in California. And I looked at these women. I thought they look very different from me. I'm afraid they won't relate to me. But then I started talking about the feelings. There was a lot of stuff that happened between that first drink and the last drink, right? There were things like, I often had that experience when I was drinking that I would just I had two alter egos. It was either Wimpy Wendy or Badass Betsy because I was either crying or fighting when I was loaded. And I'd wake up the next morning and be like, what was that all about? Yeah. And I realized that I was never taught any coping skills, right? Mm-hmm. Like when I was growing up, my mom had two feelings. She was either really happy or really pissed. And I felt like she saved her happy face for the outside world. I mean, she was a hardworking, I get it. It's like I'm a middle-aged woman with two kids myself. Now I get it. But then I didn't, right? I didn't know what, and my predominant feelings growing up were guilty and wrong, right? And so my covering strategies for this not enough, not good enough was achievement. So I became like this achievement junkie, It was like the good, not good enough was sort of like hardwired. And it wasn't really, and I don't blame my mom or anything like that. She grew up in a very different time and with a different skill set, like no skills really. Like her mom is like, she's 95 now and she was one of 10. She didn't have time to cater to my nurture her, protect her, all the
Yeah.
stuff that I needed her to be for me. Right.
Yeah.
She wasn't those things. It was kind of like, oh, I gave you girls a lot of independence. And I was like, oh, I kind of felt like abandonment, but okay.
Yeah.
But
Well, isn't that so true? My mom was just here earlier this week, and my mom and I have a great relationship, but occasionally we will sort of dip into the years that I lived at home when I was growing up, and that perspective piece is so important. The way I saw something and the way she saw the exact same thing might be night and day, and neither perspective is wrong, but it sure clouds how you move through the world.
That's really interesting that you're able to have those conversations with her. Like how open can you be with your mom? Are you able to be like, oh, that really hurt my feelings when this happened?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually just recently witnessed
Mhm.
that, and it's nice. If I said that to my mother,
It would be a different conversation.
she'd go hysterical and wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah.
Oh, she wouldn't. She would be offended.
Yeah, I have an extraordinary mother. When she's, I mean, I can't believe she hasn't already written in. She will. But when she sees this, she's going to be ill that she went home yesterday, because she could have just popped in and said, Arlina, let me tell you.
Let me tell you about this one.
Which she would have done. Yeah.
Let me tell you my side of the story. Well, it's so interesting because, we all grow and evolve and change, right? And my mom definitely grew and evolved and changed over the years. And it was so funny because to see her interact with my kids was amazing. And I used to tell my boys, that sweet little lady that comes here, that is not the bitch.
That is not, yeah, that's your grandma. That is not my mom. Yeah.
That's not my mom. She changed a lot over the years, but still to the day she died, she couldn't really hear me. And I learned not to, you don't go to the hardware store for bread, right? So every once in a while, I would want her to validate my negative feelings. My mom didn't do negative feelings. She was like the most positive, happy person you will ever meet. She wouldn't discuss. And so if I tried to share something that was, causing me pain or whatever, if I needed some validation, if I was tempted to share with her, she would skip over it and go right to solution. And I just felt so unseen and not heard or understood. But it bothered me less as, I was sober a long time, right? So we had a lot of time together where I was behaving appropriately. So I just learned not to take certain things to her and ask her for something that she couldn't give me. And it was okay.
Well, I do think when you become a parent yourself, you do have the opportunity to try different things, to realize, oh, wow, so I'm not doing what she did, but I'm making my own catastrophic mistakes as a parent.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And also I think you develop some grace, because you realize even good parent-child relationships are hard. It's a lot of work to parent, and we're all showing up as well as we can. And you got
It
to.
is. It is really hard. Yeah, it's so interesting. So a lot of the work I do now is around, helping people get sober. But once we get sober and identify patterns of behavior, sometimes those patterns are hard to change, even if we have the awareness. And I do hypnosis with my clients to sort of really change that subconscious programming that's very difficult to get to in like cognitive behavioral therapies or other kinds of therapies. Like they all work, but I found I was so interested in the subconscious mind and how our brains work. And, one of the processes I do is the forgiveness of others. And, and I went through the experience myself. I sat, got into a hypnosis state, and the facilitator was like, visualize your mother sitting in a chair across from you, and she's not going to be able to, she won't remember this after she leaves. It was permission to tell her all the times I felt hurt by her. And the lady was like really egging me on, let her have it, get it all out, and it was like a somatic experience too. It's just so, all the stuff we do after recovery is so weird sometimes. I'm here for it. I was like, yes, I'll do all the weird things. Cause listen, let's not get it twisted. I did a lot of weird stuff when I was getting loaded.
None of it's weirder than what you did, simply drinking too much alcohol.
Yeah. So it was really amazing. It was an experience to get it all out, to express all the anger and disappointment And then she had me switch seats where I was my mom, and I had to explain and account for all the things that I did, like being my mom, embodying my mother and speaking for her. And it was like that realization that, wow, she was just a woman doing the best she could with limited information. And the truth of the matter is that she did a phenomenal job in her life. Like, she just passed away 6 months ago, and I can look back on all the things that she did. Thank you. Yeah, I can look back on all the things that she did, and I was like, wow, she was really amazing. And she did the best she could, and it just gave me a level of empathy for her, which in turn allowed me to give myself some empathy and grace for my own mistakes as a mom.
I mean, it lets you get to a place of peace and celebrate a life, knowing that I'm not going to forget it because it was worth remembering.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I had this really, I'm having difficulty articulating. Hopefully I'll be able to articulate. I had this really interesting experience. So after my mom died, it was like all I could see is like the amazing woman that she was. It was like all the things I had been holding on to. And that was really one of the things I regret, is not being able to resolve that resentment to like nothing. Because there were times when she was with me and she'd be telling me all these stories about her neighbors and people I didn't know. And I'm like, you're not asking me anything about my life, right? But she knew all about all the neighbors. And it was, I didn't take it well, and there were times where I was like, oh, like withholding love from mom because, whatever, human. And after she died, it was like all I could see is the good things about her. And I sort of had like this weird, like, how am I judging me right now? Like, our soul's eternal. What if my soul, after I die and ascend to heaven, be like, oh, I wish I would have seen all the good things about me. Just like, does that make sense? I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to explain this right. But that was like her gift to me. That was like her gift to me, is like, she left this world, and then I had that experience of like, oh, all I see is the good. Oh, that's right. That's all that matters. Like when she was dying, I was listening to her conversations with her friends. They were all that, what they were talking about? They were talking about how they were there for each other during the hard times, that they loved each other, that they had a lot of good laughs, and that's all that mattered. That's all that mattered in the end, was that they loved each other, and they were just, and that saying, we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I have such clarity about my day-to-day stuff now.
Wow.
Where I didn't have it before.
That is a gift. That's an incredible gift that now you're sharing with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I popped this up from my mother. I knew she would chime in, but I have to do a quick, she said,
was your mom?
Yeah. So Arlina and Allen, and made one name. So she did correct it, but to no avail. Arlina, congratulations, first of all. I'm loving your story. Of course, you know that your mother did the best she could, and you also know that it wasn't the best for you if you were missing something. I'm indeed the mother they are referencing, and all I have done is take Dana's friends under the same umbrella and be the missing piece of mother they might be, which is true. Yeah. And,
I'm taking applications for surrogate moms.
She likes Idaho, so I would say just connect the two of you and you'll be set.
I've actually had conversations with my sister. We're both parents now, and her and I would talk on the phone, and we'll come to the realization that we started the conversation complaining about our mother, and then realize that our mother was right, and we're both sitting there going, damn it, whose turn it is to tell her. I'm not going to admit to it. Right? No, you did. I did it last time. It's your turn.
Well, isn't that funny though? Because the idea of right and wrong is really fuzzy, because like we were talking earlier, that everybody has their own perspective based on the information that they have, right? It's like we establish some thoughts and ideas and beliefs, and then we make decisions based on the information that we have, and then we take action, right? And then we invoke the law of cause and effect. And sometimes, we keep getting effects that we don't like, when we have to realize there's an error in the presupposition somewhere in the, initial information that we have. Like if you keep making the same decisions, taking the same actions, it's like you're right on a track, and then you just end up in the same spot. And you're like, how did I get here again? Right? We have to examine our thinking. And sometimes it's like when, going back to, right and wrong. And it's like, oh, mom was right. Yeah, mom was right about a lot of stuff, but is it really about right and wrong, or is it about I had this perspective, and because my sister and I can stand shoulder to shoulder and witness a situation, and we come away with two completely different meanings, based on who we are, what we believe about the world and ourselves, and what we're capable of. It's so interesting. So, like, and all information can be useful within the right context and perspective.
Well,
Right?
and it can also be taken out of context and shaped into what you want it to be or not be.
Right. Yeah.
If somebody changes course and shows up trying to do something different, but you're expecting that they're going to do the old thing, then you may not even notice that they're trying something different, that they're trying to engage or account for their past behavior or whatever. I mean, I think as the spouse of someone in recovery, that has been an interesting challenge for me. If Maz does something today in sobriety that kind of puts me back into feeling like I used to feel when he was drinking, I have to say to myself that I have to recalibrate. He's entitled to continue to make mistakes as a human being.
Right.
It doesn't mean he's drinking. It doesn't mean that suddenly he's wrong and I'm right, like it used to be. I've had to also grow, adapt, evolve, and recognize that just because I feel the same way I used to feel doesn't mean it's the same situation it used to be.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's triggering something that's unresolved from the past, and I think it's so interesting because when moms try to give us information, like I was talking about before, there's something very important about validating somebody's feelings first before moving to solution. So yeah, mom tried to tell you something that was some good information that was, right or helpful or useful. But if my feelings are not validated, if I don't feel heard and understood and seen, if my feelings aren't validated, I'm going to be stuck there. I'm going to be stuck there until my feelings are validated before I can move on to solution. Because the truth of the matter is I feel like most of us already know what the solution is.
I feel like maybe you just need to send us a bill. This feels like therapy. Lay out on the couch. Any moment.
So I did that same thing. I interviewed somebody and she, I was like, okay, we're going to do some free therapy for Arlina.
Wow. You're so right. We do. I mean, if I guess you have to take the addiction piece out of it. Like if I think about when Maz was in the throes of his addiction, he might have known the solution, but he had no way to get there because his addiction just clouded everything. So unless you're in that moment, I think we do kind of know the solutions. But you're right. If someone doesn't stop and say, I hear you, I see you, I'm sorry, whatever needs to be said, then you're right. As the person who has revealed that, you're stuck there. And all of the solutions in the world aren't going to move you forward because you're trapped in a place of feeling invisible.
Invisible, yeah. I need to be seen and heard. Yeah, it's so funny. Like with my husband, I tell him, I mean, the best words I have found is, I can see how you feel that way. Right? Isn't that good? And with my husband, sometimes I tell him, I know now what it is that I need to hear, right? And so sometimes when I vent to my husband, he was raised with 3 women, so he's a great listener. And he knows not to fix, right? But I actually am somebody that needs feedback too.
I learned not to try and fix.
You're doing a good job of not fixing. I appreciate that. Anyway,
so I'm gonna give Maz a little pro tip here. So this is really for Dana. I need to know what it is I need from him when I approach him with, and if I need to vent, I need to know what it is that I need. And so I will tell him, look, I'm having some feelings. I need to process out loud. All I need is a poor baby and a hug at the end of this. And he'll be like, okay. I can see him brace himself. He's adorable. I'm like, okay, go. I'm like, do my thing. This happened and that happened, and explore all my feelings and I let it all out. And then I look and I'm like, and he goes, oh, poor baby. He gives me a hug. I can see how you feel that way.
Yeah.
That's all I needed. And then I'm off on my merry way because I know what I'm supposed to do.
That is so true. And I am sorry for the men in our lives who attach themselves to women who have a lot to say. I have a lot to say about almost every topic, whether I have feelings about it or not, know anything about it or not. I'll jump into anything. So I appreciate that it's not, we're not easy women to be married to. I'll just say that. I'm going to make an assumption about you, Arlina, in the 35 minutes.
Well, I'm so easy to live with. I don't know what you're talking about.
Nonetheless.
Well, I have come to understand that some people need talkers because they don't want to, they don't want to say anything.
They don't want to fill the void. Yeah, I'm happy to fill all the voids. So it's about finding the person who can yin and yang you, I think.
Yeah,
I'm curious to know about your podcast. Let's transition to that a little bit, because it's a really lovely place for really, really great conversation. So talk to us about your podcast.
Well, I have a kind of a cool little story about how it started. This is actually my second podcast. The first one I did was a sales podcast. I used to do technology sales in Silicon Valley for 10 years. And I was like, there's no women are underrepresented. So I thought, and I like to talk. So I was like, podcast. But it was really on my heart to do one around recovery. But I am 12-step oriented. And, the traditions state that we maintain anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. And I was really struggling with this conflict. It was a dream on my heart, but I was like, I didn't want to be excommunicated, so to speak. I didn't want to lose my community. But then something happened. So I attended a 6 a.m. meeting every morning for years. And there was a lady there that attended the meetings, and her name was Gina. And Gina had been suffering with chronic headaches, chronic pain, and insomnia. And she was at the meeting at 6 a.m. and was in a single car accident and died 3 hours later. And I had known Gina for probably 15 years, and she and I were almost the same age. She was a couple months older than me, but she and I kind of looked the same. And she had changed so much. When I first met her, she was really angry. And over time, she had softened and just blossomed and graduated from college and was just starting her career. And I was so heartbroken. And I thought, and I related her. So I was like, you know what? I don't want to die with this dream on my heart. Death has a way of clarifying things and changing your priorities. And I decided that if this was a dream that was on my heart, that I needed to follow through and do it. So that was almost 6 years ago. And there have been almost 210 interviews. I've talked to people from all over the world, from sex trafficking victims to housewives and, construction workers and technology people and, every walk of life. I have interviewed a lot of authors and doctors, and really my goal is to just share the information that saved me. I was going to die I used to drive drunk and put myself in very dangerous situations. I didn't really talk a lot about how dark it got for me, but it got very dark, and I'm just so blessed that I survived it. And so when you have like a near-death experience like that, and you find information that saves you and transforms you and changes your life, it's tempting to shout it from the rooftops. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm doing. I mean, I share my story a lot. I share other people's stories because it's like you were saying, maybe the circumstances are different, but the feelings are all the same. Mm-hmm. And that's where we connect. We connect at the heart level. And they say that addiction or alcoholism is a disease of isolation and connection is the cure. So that's what I'm really trying to do is to try to bring forth stories, different stories of people who have recovered, so that those that are still struggling and people who feel lost can find their people and feel connected and really blossom in life. Because that's a thing. It's possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely where we're at too. We felt like there was just such a we feel so blessed that Maz came through that and that our marriage made it.
That's it. That's great. Can I tell you that is a miracle? You guys are amazing.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I knew nothing about alcoholism going into this journey. You didn't really know that much about it either.
No, I was a firm believer I wasn't an alcoholic.
Well,
I mean, you had to be, right? It was the thing that was, so the alcoholism thing is a funny thing because to a certain extent, it's the thing that kept me alive. Because if I had to feel all the feelings, I don't know that I would have survived them. So your savior becomes your executioner at some point where it's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
I mean, listening to other people, I really do understand how lucky we are, and this isn't necessarily the norm at all, which is why, Dana has evolved the title of our podcast to include, marriage in the title as well, because talking about that as well.
Can I tell you my most favorite marriage tip?
Yeah.
Besides the poor baby and a hug thing.
That's a good one. That's a very good one.
When I first got sober, I had this sponsor who, I love her to death, Julie. I would say to her, I'd call her and I'd be like, Bobby did this and Bobby did that, blah, blah, blah. And she would say to me, she'd be like, I don't sponsor Bobby. I'll sponsor you. So let's talk about you. And she would help me talk it through, do 4-step, who I was resentful at, the specific exact cause of the resentment, how it affected me, and what my part was, meaning what was my pattern of behavior. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I felt like people were being mean to me. Turns out they were responding to something I had done, right? Mm-hmm. They were provoked in some way, right? Mm-hmm. Or I had done something in some way. And I didn't see that part. I was just being me. All I could see was what you did wrong. So when Julie and I would work together, she would help me get clarity about my pattern of behavior, how my behavior affected him and how I may have hurt him or provoked him, or however you want to say that. And she would help me get to the place of empathy for him, where I was truly like, oh, wow, he's somebody I love. And this is my part in this pattern. And owning it and being willing to go to him and humility, genuine humility, like, because I love this person. He's my favorite person. And be like, oh, I see now my pattern. I'm sorry. I see the pattern. I could see how you would feel that way. And this is what I'm going to try to do different, and be open to the dialogue. If you see this coming, whatever, just be open to dialogue. And meanwhile, he's doing the same thing with his sponsor. And so when we come together, we're both seeing our parts and willing to take responsibility. And that process resolves resentment. And I really feel like it's the resentment that is the wedge in a relationship, because sometimes you get to that place where all you can see is your own pain and there becomes this long history of crimes for lack. We start building this dossier of the other person's guilt. Mm-hmm. But until we can look at ourselves and own our part, nothing changes. So
I've said 1 million times, a nurse gave me a journal when Maz went into his medically induced coma and said, you're going to need this. And I didn't even really know what she meant, but I took the journal and I, sitting next to him, just started to write, having no idea what I was going to say or anything else. And about 85 pages later, I know that journal is the reason that we're together from my perspective, because that's where I had to really get honest about what role did I play in this? What did I show up as? Who did I show up as? What harm did I cause this person that helped feed, fuel, or abet his addiction? And had I not done that, I don't think we'd be together, because I would not have been able to let go of just the resentment and looking at him and saying, you did this. When, it wasn't perfect by the time he woke up. We had a lot of work yet to do. But I certainly knew that I was a character in this story. And a character who was not just a victim. And that was really important.
Really important. I was so brave to do that self-examination. And Maz was asleep for all of it. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, I got when I got to rehab, I had a lot of important and helpful self-reflection to do myself. So
Well, and you can imagine
we caught up.
Yeah,
at the end.
I had plenty of things to say at him when he did wake up. So it wasn't all love
One of
when
the
he
most-
woke up.
I'm going to have you on my podcast because I have so many questions. I'm so curious as to how long was rehab for you? Was it like the 30-day stint type of thing?
4.5 weeks
Well,
of inpatient.
It was 4.5 weeks of inpatient, and then 2 weeks of I call it day release. So I went from 8:30 to 3:30.
Like outpatient, intensive outpatient. Yeah. And then did you do 12 steps or anything else after that?
We did that all the way through that, and I go to regular AA meetings.
You just okay. And how long ago was that?
5 years, 3 months, and 4 days.
I love it when people know exactly. I was like, oh, he's in it to win it.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things we did, we had to write an obituary. One when we did drinking, and one when we did. And my counselor said to me, "Have you noticed what's missing in the one you didn't write? You didn't mention what's in the one where you kept drinking and died." And I said, "Yeah, I didn't mention Dana."
Wow.
I did put a lot of pressure on our only one child, because in the one where I gave up drinking, we had a very happy life and we had 6 grandchildren.
Wow.
So
we won't tell Quinn that.
Quinn's got some work to do.
That's asking too much of Quinn.
I mean, he can marry somebody with 5. You never know.
We're adopted, so maybe he's got a bit of leeway.
There's lots of ways that can happen. It's fine.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, there might be twins.
Yeah, that's true. 3 said.
Yeah, no, maintaining relationships afterwards is super important. It does take 2. It
does, because nobody falls into this alone. I mean, your little 9 or 10-year-old self did not pick up that drink absolutely alone. Something in your life helped you decide that was an avenue to go down.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to own that. You might have been the drinker, but you didn't get there alone, and you haven't gotten out of it alone. And that has been, for me, the most profound part of these conversations is just, as you said early on, everybody's recovering from something. We talk about that all the time. Alcohol is the noun that Daily Dose is based on, but it could be anything.
It's a symptom of a deeper problem. And I've come to the conclusion that addiction and obsession, because there's like the process addictions as well as the physical chemical addictions. But the purpose of obsession or addiction is distraction. It's distraction from the pain, right? And so Gabor Mate was one of those guys who, big in the recovery community. He said, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain, right? And so this, recovery has become this learning how to metabolize that pain and process it to resolution so that it's not driving that compulsion. And it's so interesting, when we develop these pains in childhood or whatever, we disassociate and disconnect. That's how we survive. But it becomes this big mystery of like, why am I acting like this? Like later in life and I'm doing all these terrible, why am I acting like this? I have no clue why. It's because I'm disassociated from my pain. I'm not even aware that it's there half the time.
Yeah.
And so that's what recovery is about. It's recovering our whole selves, the good and the bad. It's recovering the memories and processing that pain instead of carrying it or covering it. It's a trip, but it's amazing to watch when people, are able to release that stuff. I tell people I make people cry for a living. That's what I do, because you're working with someone, they realize the pain is released through tears.
Yeah.
Like people release through tears. And that's what I know I'm doing my job is when someone's crying, I'm like, oh, phew. Yeah, in a good way.
Arlina, where can people find your podcast?
I'm on all the major podcast players, iTunes, Spotify, all the things. If you go to soberlifeschool.com, that's sort of like the hub. So I teach a self-esteem class and I do one-on-one coaching. I mean, I encourage people to try all the free programs. I'm actually in the process. I'm going to be publishing a AA survival guide for people who are interested for people who want to try 12 steps, like the sober curious, but there's a lot of like resistance to 12-step programs. So this will be sort of, I totally know we're over time, but
no, there's no time.
Do you ever love? I've noticed this myself. It's the religious part of it that a lot of people.
Religious.
Yeah.
It's the powerlessness. It's the people in AA. It's not the hotbed of mental health, right? So that's where sick people go. So and then people are offended that the sick people say dumb things or hurtful things, and it's like, P.S. Not one person is speaking for all of the program, right? So if somebody says something you don't like, next. I mean, it's literally a take what you like, leave the rest. And it's not religious, it's spiritual. There's a difference. Religion is
that's what I mean, that it's not really defined for the people who just take the book.
Yeah.
Can't get over. I mean, I've had some great examples where this kid, he was probably about 22, but
as a kid.
If you're 30 years younger than me, you're a kid.
Yeah, I'm about 50s. Anyone under 20 is a baby.
About he couldn't find his something to believe in. What his foundation for faith was, and he said, the guy who was sponsoring said, "What did you do when I told you to sit down?" He said, "I sat down." He said, "Well, your faith at the minute right now is the fact that you had faith that chair wouldn't collapse."
Ooh, that's a good one.
And that really stuck with me. I thought, that's brilliant, because a lot of people make a mistake. As soon as someone mentions the word faith, you think of a religion, and it's not necessarily that.
Yeah,
it's not. There's, I talk to people who are atheists who are able to, take, dive into the program because they use virtually the principles around spirituality, like kindness and love and grace. So they're calling it something else, but it's all the same. It doesn't matter what you call it. People use the word God just because it's easiest. You say God, everyone kind of knows what you're talking about. It's a spirit. It's, but what I didn't know when I first got there was that you could define what that word meant. So we can assign new meaning and redefine what it means to you. I didn't know that was a thing. I grew up religious where it was like, this is what it means. And
right. There's one true God, and he looks like a grandpa.
Yeah. Looks like
that's another thing. Yeah. There's a lot of women out there with a lot of religious trauma and can't get past it. And listen, I love the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, but like Chapter to the Wise, it's a tad condescending.
It was written in the 1930s by men.
Yeah. Bill, bless his heart, it's an amazing book. And what's so funny is he wrote the 12 and 12 after doing some acid. Maybe that's a whole nother story, like psychedelics.
He'd swapped addictions.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Wow. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, there are some very typical things I hear in the broader recovery community why people can't or won't go. It's like turning your will over to something else. It feels like it's an external locus of control. It's actually not. It's, you think a higher power is outside of you. It's actually still within you.
Inside you.
Yeah. So this
taught to say that, though. You're absolutely right. But if you're in an AA group where they don't explain that, people do tend to get lost.
Well, there's a lot of
but it's just people. We're none of us are perfect. So
it's a great place to practice. There are some. So anyway, I feel like this survival guide is, I'm going to publish it probably by the end of the month. But it's the survival guide that addresses. You know what it is? It's context and it's perspective, so that people don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
People don't say, "Oh, this is not for me," and they miss this process that is so amazing. They say, "Oh, alcoholic is a shame label." Really? In my world, it's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to close the gap between those kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
If you just reframe these things, these hurdles that you're presenting as obstacles. And the reason I want people to go is it's free. You have the ability to do service. You get to talk, speaking your truth is so liberating and empowering. You do service there. You're constantly revisiting the information that helps you stay sober. Anyway, and there's just so many reasons to do it. So this guy, it's like the survival guide for the,
I love that.
I
So
love
we
that too.
will keep track of that
Damn
and
straight.
share it with our
I'll
audience.
send it to you as soon as it's done.
Excellent. All right. One more thing from Bonnie Bowman. You're the most informative guest. What you are saying is applicable to any person in any situation. Addiction is one component.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
almost always listen to these conversations and think that I have so many pieces of it that I relate to, even though addiction is not a problem, and so many insights to take to just go about my own life. And that would be true for everybody. So Arlina, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was so much fun. You guys are adorable, and I'll chat with you later about coming on to my podcast.
Yeah, we would love to join you collectively or individually.
Yeah, fantastic to meet you.
Gosh.
Hey, best of luck.
Thank you so much. It was great meeting y'all.
Finish your book so we can
Yes.
read it, talk about it, and share it with everyone on our world.
Sounds great.
Thanks so much, everybody else. We will
Thank
see
you.
you on Tuesday. Have a great day.